It's my great pleasure to introduce to you the moderator of this event, Mrs. Ann Lucas, who we call Nancy. She is the Assistant Director and Senior Nurse Practitioner at Wellness Center of Loyola University and an Assistant Professor at School of Nursing of Loyola University, Chicago. She is a national and international conference presenter and has published several journals on medically relevant subjects. She is a current chairperson of Research and Grants Committee of NINA. She is also the chairperson of the Women's Forum of Chicago Province of the World Malayalee Council. Please welcome Mrs. Ann Lucas.
Good day, everyone from all over the world, both local, national, and international countries. We are pleased that you're all here today to join us for this special virtual seminar hosted by our main presenter, Mr. Binish J. Matthew. Just a couple of housekeeping things. Number one, if you have questions, please place it in the chat box. And if there are any personal questions, you can always later direct it to the presenter through a link or via email. We shall first begin our program to invoke God's blessings with Alona George, who is our 9th grader, who is passionate about singing, and she's been singing since age 3, and she's sang multiple songs in English, Malayalam, and Hindi. And she has also shared awards and stages with other renowned musicians. We call upon Alona George for her prayer song.
നന്മ നിറഞ്ഞൊരു ഹൃദയം നൽകാൻ ചിന്മയരൂപ വന്നാലും നന്മകൾ മാത്രം ചെയ്തിടുവാനായി എൻ മനമെന്നും ഒരുക്കുക നീ നന്മ നിറഞ്ഞൊരു ഹൃദയം നൽകാൻ ചിന്മയരൂപ വന്നാലും നന്മകൾ മാത്രം ചെയ്തിടുവാനായി എൻ മനമെന്നും ഒരുക്കുക നീ ണർത്താൻ എന്നുടെ വാണികൾ പൊന്മണി വീണകളാക്കുക നീ നന്മയിലെന്നും നിലയും കൊള്ളാൻ നിൻമുഖ ദർശനമരുളുക നീ നന്മ നിറഞ്ഞൊരു ഹൃദയം നൽകാൻ ചിന്മയരൂപ വന്നാലും നന്മകൾ മാത്രം ചെയ്തിടുവാനായി എൻ മനമെന്നും ഒരുക്കുക നീ നന്മയിലെന്നും നീങ്ങിടുവാനായി കൽമതിലെല്ലാം നീക്കുക നീ നന്മ വിതയ്ക്കാൻ എന്നുടെ നിലവിൽ കൺവശമാകയ കറ്റുക നീ നന്മ നിറഞ്ഞൊരു ഹൃദയം നൽകാൻ ചിന്മയരൂപ വന്നാലും നന്മകൾ മാത്രം ചെയ്തിടുവാനായി എൻ മനമെന്നും ഒരുക്കുക നീ നന്മകൾ പാടാൻ പറവ കണക്കൊരു പൊന്മുകിലാക്കി ഉയർത്തുക നീ നന്മയിലങ്ങെ സന്നിധി ചേരാൻ ചിന്മയനങ്ങ് നയിച്ചാലും നന്മ നിറഞ്ഞൊരു ഹൃദയം നൽകാൻ ചിന്മയരൂപ വന്നാലും നന്മകൾ മാത്രം ചെയ്തിടുവാനായി എൻ മനമെന്നും ഒരുക്കുക നീ.
Thank you very much, Alona, for blessing us today. Next, I call upon Mr. Mathukutti Alamparambil, the chairman of Chicago Province, who also works at the Lake County, Illinois Department of Public Safety and Operations, to give us a welcome speech.
Good evening, everyone. As the chairman of the Chicago Province, I'm happy to welcome everyone. First, I'd like to welcome our main speaker, the presenter of this program, Mr. Binish J. Matthew, and our guest speakers, Ms. Monica Zuckers and Mrs. Lovely Varghese. Next, our global leaders, Global Chairman, Dr. P.A. Ibrahim Haji, Global Vice Chair, Dr. K.G. Vijayalakshmi, Global President, Mr. Gopal Pillai, Global Vice President, Mr. John Mathai, Global Vice President, Mr. PC Matthew, and other global leaders. Next, I would like to welcome all our American region Chairman, Mr. Philip Thomas, President, Mr. Sudhir Nambiar, Secretary, Mr. Pindo Kanambali, Treasurer, Mr. Cecil Cherian, Vice Chairperson, Mr. Sandha Pillai, Vice Chair, Mr. Philip Merritt, Vice President, Mr. Yeldo Peter, Vice President, Mr. Johnson Talchilor, Vice President, Mr. Matthews Abraham, Public Relations, Mr. Anil Augustine, Advisory Board Chair, Mr. Chaco Koikilet, and Women's Forum President, Mr. Sosama Andrews and team. Next, I would like to welcome our Chicago province leaders, President Mr. Benjamin Thomas, Secretary Mr. Thomas DeCruz, Treasurer Mr. Koshi George, Vice Chairperson Ms. Bina George, Chairman Advisory Board Mr. Thambi Matthew, Business Forum Chair Mr. Philip Putambaril, Vice President Mr. Ranjan Abraham, Vice President Mr. Saji Kurian, and Charity Mr. Thomas Varghese, Youth Forum Chairman Blessing Alexander, and our sponsor Thomas Mammon. I also welcome all our 15 province leaders and members, and welcome Kurigeshu Uncle, the one who is joining from India. And I welcome our seminar coordinators, Ms. Ann Lucas, Mrs. Ann Lucas, and Mrs. Abby Kolat, and Mrs. Sarah Gabriel. Once again, I welcome each and everyone, our friends and all WMC family members to this virtual presentation. Thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you, Mr. Mathaguti Alamperungal, for that speech. Next, I call upon Mr. Benjamin Thomas, who's the president of the Chicago province, to give us the presidential address. Just a few words about Mr. Benjamin Thomas. He's the senior most Malayalee physical therapist in Illinois, working for Amita Healthcare. He's also the founder president of ARPO, the Association of Rehabilitation Professionals of Kerala origin. Mr. Benjamin Thomas.
Thank you, Nancy. Dear global, regional, and provincial leaders of the World Malayalee Council, dignitaries, well-wishers, friends, and family. The Chicago province of the World Malayalee Council is proud to present an informative session with all of you. We are privileged to have Mr. Vinush J. Matthew, founder of Life Challenge International, as a main speaker today. Also, we have guest speakers, Mrs. Monica Zuckers, a radio host who is well known to the Malayali community of Illinois, and Mrs. Lovely Varghese, a victim advocate. Also, Lovely and myself are co-workers for the past 25 years in the Amita Healthcare Network. I can very well say that I have made the right choice by joining World Malayalee Council, where I have the pleasure of working with an amazing group of people as my own family. The wonderful charity projects that have been undertaken in the global, regional, and provincial level are worth mentioning. Feeding 25,000 people on Thanksgiving Day is one among them. A big salute to you, all the leaders. Let me take this moment to congratulate a couple of people. Mr. P.C. Matthew, the Global Vice President of the World Malayalee Council, who was instrumental in the formation of the Chicago province. We feel so glad that he is running for the Council of Garland City, Texas. Mr. P.C. Matthew, we already consider you a winner just by showing your willingness to serve the community. We wholeheartedly support you and wish you all the best. This is a proud moment of the Chicago province, as one among us, Mr. Matthews Abraham, has been elected the Vice President of America region. The Chicago province consider it a great honor. We congratulate you, Mr. Matthews, on your greatly deserved position as the Vice President of America region, and wishing you nothing but the best. We really appreciate the initiative that was taken by Mr. Sabi Kolat as the main coordinator and Mrs. Ann Lucas and Mrs. Sarah Gabriel as additional coordinators of this seminar. We owe a great amount of appreciation to Mr. Thomas Marmon, Vice Chairman of the Chicago Province, for being the sponsor of today's event. We are so happy to see many attendees for this program. I welcome all of you and thank you everyone in advance. Enjoy the seminar.
Thank you, Mr. Benjamin Thomas, for that calming voice of yours in giving us the presidential address. Next, we call upon Mr. Matthews Abraham, also known as Mr. Roy. He's the Advisory Board Vice President of the America region, who will introduce one of our guest speakers, Mrs. Lovely Burgess. Mr. Matthews Abraham.
Thank you, Anne. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Benjamin Thomas, for your kind words. I would like to thank entire WMC America region leadership for giving me the opportunity to work with you all for the well-being of the community. Let me do my responsibility to introduce one of the guest speaker, Mrs. Lovely Burgess. Ms. Lovely Burgess is a traditional Kerala housewife, become voice to voiceless, especially among Asian women in US, who brought justice for her beloved son, Praveen Burgess. I'm taking a quote from our own Mahatma Gandhi. You must be the change you want to see in the world. This is exactly apt to Mrs. Lovely Burgess, who made a change in Asian community by fighting against injustice. With much privilege and respect, I would like to invite my dear friend, known for last 20 years, Mrs. Lovely Burgess, to this program and requesting her to give a talk.
Is Lovely in here?
Yeah, I see her phone number. Lovely's icon. I just unmuted.
I'm here.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I'm in the car. That's why we are just coming back from Carbondale. It was Praveen's memorial. We went down there for a memorial service. I'm just coming back. So it's kind of hard to see and hear. I hope you all can hear me. So thank you for inviting me and talk to you all about our tragedy. We are the victim, I'm so thankful that you are doing this program, to bring awareness into the community about the addiction. And we are victim of this big problem that is facing America. Praveen was a 19-year-old college student, and he was robbed and killed for a $25 by a drug addict. He was looking for money to get drugs, and Praveen was walking on the street. He was at the wrong place at the wrong time, and the murderer got Praveen and attacked him just for $25. So that is, when I talk about addiction, the first thing that comes to my mind is like, how can we get rid of this problem? This is a problem that is happening so much more than what we think. And the issue is all these people that are caught committing a crime, they are released into the community without proper guidance and proper rehabilitation. So that affects it. They don't learn anything from that. So when they are released into the community again, without proper guidance and rehabilitation, the chances of doing it again is really high. It's the same thing happened in Praveen's case. The person who killed Praveen was in jail for 3 months, who was facing 20 to 60 years, but the judge decided to let him go. So he's walking free. with no rehabilitation, and he's doing what he always did. So that is a big problem. You know, how can we prevent this? That's why all the social workers are come into place. And I am so glad that you all joined together and started to talk about this case. And we are the perfect example of a person who was a drug addict committing a crime. It's just not one person that is affected by this. It's a whole family and a whole community is affected by this event. So I know Monica will be talking more about our problems later on this talk. And I will be available later on today. I should be home in a few minutes. So if you have any questions, I can join your question answer session. But I am just so happy that you started this event. This is a beginning to talk about it. You know, like for us, getting into this justice system in this country was not easy. So, you know, it is an awareness, and I'm glad you invited me to talk in this program. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Lovely Verghese, for opening up this talk and bringing us all to the same platform in terms of what we think and perceive about this problem. Next, I call upon Mr. Koshi George, who's the treasurer of WMC and St. Thomas Church, Chicago. He's also the senior financial analyst for Chicago Public Schools. Mr. Koshi George will also introduce Monica Zuckers, one of our guest speakers as well. Mr. Koshi George.
Thank you, Anne. Hope you all can hear me, and good evening to everyone. Let me introduce Monica Zuckers. Monica Zuckers is a lifelong resident of Southern Illinois. She is a wife and mother of 2 children. She attended SIU and worked as a freelance court reporter for a few years before staying home to raise her children. In 2012, she hosted a radio show that became a platform for her voice as a victim advocate, and it's what led her and Lovely to know one another. After seeing the obvious laws in the system, Monica went back and obtained her associates in criminal justice, speaking to groups about Pravin's case, and continued to take interest and advocate for victims and families facing injustice. And today, Lovely Verghese and family and friends, they were in their Pravin's memorial, the 7th memorial, and Monica was one of the pivotal person in leading that memorial today. I welcome, on behalf of World Malayalee Council, Chicago Province, I welcome Monica Zuckers today evening for her speech. Thank you.
Hello, and I hope everybody can hear me. I just wanted to start off by saying thank you so very much for including me. We don't have many group meetings like this that I've ever heard of, and it's so fascinating for me to be a part of this. And of course, I appreciate you inviting me. And you know, like Lovely said, I'm from the Southern Illinois area, and I am from the small towns where the person who murdered her son is from. And even before the pandemic, we have a huge problem here with addiction, especially young people taking their parents' opioids to start with, alcohol, drugs. And a lot of times they start about 14 or 15 years old because frankly, there just isn't a lot of things to do to keep kids busy. And so back in 2014, whenever Pravin was killed, the young man that killed him was on Xanax, he was drinking, he was highly intoxicated. And, you know, in the beginning, they tried to flip that and try to blame all of this on Pravin and project that onto Pravin. But luckily, we finally got our trial and we got to find out who really was on drugs and who really was the perpetrator and the aggressor. And it was, of course, Gage Bethune, who was found guilty of killing Pravin. But especially, you know, since we're talking about addictions inflamed by the pandemic, I just can't believe what we've been seeing. In the very beginning, of course, just as a regular layperson. I don't have any medical background, and I'm just a mom, but I am observing, and I've been watching and being fearful and trying to protect my own children and my own husband as we've been navigating our way through this pandemic. And if we thought before that we had a problem with substance abuse with our younger generation, now during the pandemic, it has skyrocketed. Those that were already into drinking and substance abuse, it has gone through the roof. People that thought they had it under control, maybe even parents, maybe they were going to their meetings, maybe they had their alcoholism under control or their substance abuse. With the stress, with the uncertainty, with the, you know, we all had our lives turned upside down. And I know for myself, it's just been something else. And, you know, we try to keep track of our kids and make sure they're okay. And they've had no school for almost a year. And then we were fearful of the virus itself. So I see how even people that have never struggled before, people that had their addictions under control, I've seen many relapse. And people that have never had an addiction, I've seen pick up a bottle or start taking medication or self-medicating to try to deal with this pandemic. And it's scary. One thing that I wanted to bring up that I think is important is I have several friends that are teachers, and the DCFS calls are down because our teachers that are the mandated reporters that see these children in abusive homes on a daily basis, when they notice bruises, when they notice they're not groomed and not well taken care of, they can call DCFS. And since they're not seeing these children at school, they're not being able to report. And I know the calls to DCFS are down, but I know the domestic violence is up. I know the substance abuse is up. And one thing that I found helpful, my son's 17, but I still monitor his Xbox Live very carefully. But he has friends all over town and all over the United States and all over the world. And I wonder if there's a way that we can, if somebody could make this app, it would be very helpful. And there may be a way. I know that when my son's playing Xbox, he's literally in everybody's homes and they're in our home. He can hear what's going on. He knows what's going on with their parents. He knows what's going on with their siblings. And I just wonder if one of the tools that people can maybe facilitate, or it might already be there, is a community within, you know, even the gaming, since they're at home, they're not at school. If, like my son has said before, Mom, hey, my friend is always in a good mood and usually has everything going on. I can hear his parents, they're yelling, they're fighting. I think his dad was an alcoholic and he's starting to drink a lot. And I just feel helpless because I wish that I could get at least the gamer name and, you know, turn that in, or we need somebody to call that we can kind of monitor one another and maybe help. But like I say, circling back, the person that killed Lovely's son, as a teenager in this area, started with addiction and alcohol and drugs. And a lot of people in this area just take it that this is just how it goes. A lot of people weren't surprised. A lot of people didn't think it was a big deal. And of course, that's not how Praveen was brought up. And it's just, it's inflamed, it's exacerbated, it's all over the place right now. And I don't have the answers, but I can see the problem. So I'm very interested in listening this evening to gather information and help protect my own child and help my community if possible. And thank you again so much for giving me some time this evening. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Monica Zuckers, for your enlightening thoughts, and hopefully there'll be an app out there. We don't know if there's one out there, but that's a good thought to throw out there. And we're happy to hear more from you later on.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. So we shall move on to our next person is Mr. Sabi Kolap, and Sabi is a social worker, and his work is mainly focused on substance abuse, with which he works at the Illinois Department of Health Services. Mr. Sabi will introduce our main speaker for today, Mr. Dinesh J. Matthews. So over to Mr. Sabi Kolap. Sabi?
Can you hear me? Yep, okay. Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. This is our first community event from Chicago province. I'm so proud. Let me take a second to recognize our resource committee members, Sarah Gabriel and Lucas, Matthews Abraham, for working with me in the past few months to make this event happen today. Most of us strive to do our job very passionately, and there are some among us take their job as a mission, going above and beyond by taking unbelievable risks and sacrifices to make a difference in people's lives. They are truly heroes. It's an honor and privilege to introduce a real hero and my dear friend, Mr. Binuj J. Matthew, to you to this evening. Over the years, he and I have coordinated a few programs in the Chicago area. He's a good friend. I had the privilege to meet his family in San Jose. He is the founder of Life Challenge International. This organization has been helping to deal with addiction and its related problems, life challenges, since 2003. Thousands of individuals and families have been rehabilitated through their organizations, residential as well as outreach programs in India, South Asia, and Africa. Binuj is born and brought up in Bangalore. He's currently settled in San Jose, California with his family. He's a father of 2 teens and lovely wife, Indra. His story is a unique one in so many ways. He himself is a living witness to the miracle of recovery from addictions. He's an engineer by profession. However, he and his wife Indra dedicated their whole life to serve the struggling individuals and families to overcome addiction. He's a renowned trainer in the field of addiction. Today, he is here to present to us about the addictions and its impacts in our society. Let's welcome recovery hero, Binuj, to this World Malayalee Council event. We are lucky to have him here today. And Binuj, take it from here.
Thank you, Sabi. Good evening to all of you, and it really is an honor for me to address all of you on this forum. My appreciation to all the organizers for putting together such an event. I mean, as we already heard our previous speakers say, for an event to be hosted on such an important subject, hats off to the organizers. My special honor to lovely Verghese and Monica Zuckers for sharing their story. Thank you for being an advocate in a matter like this. For today's seminar, I'm going to share my screen, and I'd like to do a PowerPoint presentation to help me with today's seminar. Today, we're going to look at addictions inflamed by the pandemic. As was already said by Sabi, I'd just like to quickly give you an introduction to our organization. It's Life Challenge International, and we have been helping society overcome addictions and other life challenges since 2003. We run numerous addiction recovery homes, and hundreds of men have gone through our centers. We have about 120 beds in our centers in India. We also are actively involved in prison work. We do awareness programs and seminars inside the prisons in South Asia. We are involved in community awareness programs, school seminars, rallies in South Asia and Middle East. And we also run a school, residential school for children who come from homes of addiction and HIV. And so we also have a Life Change Academy, and we teach addiction counseling training. To know more about our programs or for any help, please feel free to contact us at info@lifechallenge.com. We are here to help society overcome addictions, and other life problems. You know, as an organization, we are dedicated to fight this wicked enemy. As far as we are concerned, addiction is the greatest enemy of the human race. All over the world, addiction has destroyed millions of individuals and families. And the reason why it's so devastating is because this is not an enemy that's hiding in some caves or mountains. This enemy is freely wandering in our society, in our homes, in our schools, and capturing people of all backgrounds, all ages, male and female, rich and poor alike. In 1971, here in the United States, President Richard Nixon, he launched what we know as the war on drugs, and he said, drug abuse is America's public enemy number one. Now, the reason the United States took such a public stand is because the American Psychiatric Association says that the abuse of drugs and alcohol is by far the leading cause of preventable illnesses and premature death in our society. Drugs and alcohol are not the only addictions. I mean, there are many more behaviors and addictions that we will briefly look at in today's seminar. Today, we are looking at how, during this past year of the pandemic, we have seen an escalation in addiction and related life-controlling problems. Let me give you a few statistics. By June of last year, within a few months of the pandemic, 40% of US adults reported struggling with mental health or substance abuse. Here are some numbers. 31% of people started having anxiety and depression symptoms. 11% seriously considered suicide. Now, you're looking at some shocking statistics. Today's seminar is hosted by the Chicago province, so here's some statistics from Cook County, Illinois. As soon as the lockdown was imposed in March, immediate overdose deaths began to increase. You can see the spike in the graph here. Alcohol consumption has been sharply increasing. Heavy drinking by women was up by 41% during the pandemic. So friends, as you can clearly see, the rate of alcoholism and addictions have drastically increased during the pandemic. Not just alcohol and drugs, but many addictive behaviors have increased. Now, why is that? Why has addictions of all kinds, alcoholism, how come they have all been made worse by the pandemic? So in order for us to understand that, we'd have to take some time to understand the big picture. And I'm going to make an effort in the time that we have to explain to all of you so that all of you can have an understanding on the subject. And in your conversations, in your area of influence, you can make a difference. The first question is, what is addiction? What are the psychological reasons behind all of this? See, if I can convey some of that basics to you, then it may help you to understand the dynamics and maybe help you to make informed decisions to help those families and societies who may be needing help and support. So I would like to give you a simplified understanding about how addictions work. Then we will look at the effects of the pandemic on people and how this impacts addiction. And finally, we can briefly look at what are the possible steps that we can take as a community. So what is addiction? There are many different kinds of addictions: alcoholism, drug addiction, pornography, sexual addiction. In recent years, there's internet and media addictions are on the rise. Then we have compulsive behaviors relating to money and spending. So how do you define addiction? If somebody drinks a glass of wine, is he an addict? Some people say addiction is a disease because it behaves like a disease. Now, once somebody becomes an alcoholic, for example, if you don't treat him, he will get worse. And just like a disease, it's progressive and chronic. And so some people like to look at addiction as a disease. Then there are others who say, no, it's a choice. It's not a disease. They argue that addiction is self-inflicted. And if the person can make the right choice, then he is free from it. So the American Society of Addiction Medicine, this is their definition. They have said addiction is a bio, psycho, socio, spiritual disease. So what they're saying is this is a disease that affects the bio, the body, psycho, the personality, socio, which is society and relationships, and finally a spiritual disease. That's a very complicated disease right there. Now, at the same time, the US National Institute of Health, they said, unfortunately, addiction is a concept that has been the subject of much debate. Now, what does that mean? It means that if we don't have a clear, universal definition of addiction, if we cannot understand the problem, then how can you find a solution? And that is one of the reasons why there are so many different strategies to try and fight addiction. Now, Life Challenge, we as an organization, we believe in holistic transformation. We believe that for lasting recovery, transformation has to happen in all 5 realms of a person. That is spiritual, intellectual, physical, social, and psychological. Now, there are many ways to explain addiction, and we have in-depth explanations for our counseling training program, but this evening I'd like to try and give you a simplified definition. Let me just make this statement. Addiction is a cancerous desire. If all of you can just look at this phrase, then let's try to understand this. Addiction is a cancerous desire. Now, what does that mean? Okay, first let's understand cancerous. Now, cancer is a disease that is caused by abnormal cell growth. Then that begins to spread into other parts of the body and begins to invade key organs of the body, interfering with body functions and finally leading to death. Okay, that's cancer, cancerous. So these normal cells that suddenly have an abnormal growth and invade other cells and organs, this is the simplest explanation of cancer. So now let's take desires. Okay, all of us have different kinds of desires. There are natural human desires. Desire for love, desire for pleasure, for fun, for friendships, for success, for accomplishments. And normal human life is to balance out these desires and have a balanced life. And there's nothing wrong in having pleasure or having a desire for success, but you have to balance them all out. That is a balanced, healthy life. A healthy life is to live with a good balance of all the desires. Now, what is a cancerous desire? A cancerous desire or unhealthy desire is the abnormal desire that begins to spread and begins to invade the various realms of a human person. Any desire that goes out of balance can become an addictive desire. For example, there's nothing wrong in eating food, but if the desire for food begins to control your life, then now you're entering the realm of addiction. Now, I just want to take one slide to try to understand how desire and pleasure work in the brain. You know, our brain, the human brain, we have our own reward system. What does that mean? It means that when we do certain things, the brain rewards us by making us feel good. This happens by the release of certain chemicals in the brain that causes a feel-good factor. This is a natural brain function that provides a feedback to us. It's like an indication of what we're doing. For example, when a mother shows love to a child, there's a dopamine chemical release, and that encourages the building of the mother-child relationship. Now, dopamine and other chemicals produce that feel-good feeling, in a sense, to encourage us towards positive action. It's a very natural way our brains function. The brain rewards you with pleasure. But now comes manipulation. Drugs and alcohol and other addictive behaviors trigger this forced dopamine release, so that instead of you receiving pleasure from the positive actions, you can now force your brain to release these chemicals to get pleasure. It's a manipulation. So the very system that is set up to enforce positive action is now being manipulated into releasing chemicals according to when we choose. Okay, so what is wrong in manipulating the reward center? What's wrong in feeling good? Well, the problem is soon the brain chemical release has been so badly manipulated that you go into a deficiency. There's only so much you can squeeze out. So here are some major symptoms of dopamine deficiency: lack of drive, lack of motivation, depression, boredom, lack of focus, concentration. And so you begin to see that these people, normal life gets into a very depressive mode. So let's look at depression as an example. There are many causes for depression. The first is, of course, addiction, which I just mentioned, which causes dopamine deficiency. You can also have depression from physical health problems, from poor nutrition, brain chemistry imbalance, and by traumatic events, which what we're talking about today as the pandemic. So today we are looking at the pandemic as a global event that has caused serious mental health challenges. So please think with me for just a minute. For a person who has learned to manipulate his or her brain reward system, as we just looked at, for a person who knows how to trigger his brain circuits to release chemicals to feel pleasure, when faced with depression, what do you think he or she is going to do? What is the solution? What is the self-medication? Go to the substance of addiction. So because as long as they are on the substance, they can temporarily get some feel-good chemicals released. But that pushes them into the addiction cycle. And as long as you keep this cycle going, you get trapped. Because life becomes very depressing. Because the moment you're off the drugs, you're in a deficiency. Life becomes meaningless and people get suicidal. You know, the pandemic has caused spike in anxiety and depression. And what's the danger? People are self-medicating because they want to get temporary relief. But that's leading to much worse consequences. You know, it's called a ripple effect. Today we are talking about addictions, we're talking about the pandemic, so I'm just trying to give an overall picture. The pandemic and unemployment, for example. Millions of people around the world are coping with job loss caused by the pandemic. Now, whether it's temporary or permanent, unemployment can lead to stress, anxiety, depression, and other mental challenges. Uncertainty and fear of the future, possible financial stresses, mortgage payments, credit card debt. All these things can cause depression, cause anxiety. Now, if the pandemic has left a person jobless, they may be experiencing many emotions, troubling thoughts, a loss of identity, a loss of sense of purpose, angry, scared. lost, not knowing what to do next, worried about how you will take care of yourself and the family and provide for basic needs. So instead of thinking clearly about the situation, which is what we should be doing, instead of looking at ways to ride out this storm, if a person turns to self-medication, then he's not able to make rational decisions. When a person is under any influence, decision-making is impacted. People are making all kinds of desperate decisions. Now, another problem with the pandemic is loneliness. Pandemic and loneliness, especially for our children and young people. The shutdown, this social distancing, isolation, this has caused huge mental health challenges for so many people, especially young people. Now, this has resulted in a spike in social media addiction. See, the long-term consequences of this is that when the pandemic is over and people are free to move around, many people may have developed some serious addictive patterns. This is worrying psychologists a lot, because by the time the pandemic is over, you may end up with people having put themselves in such addictive cycles that it's going to take an incredible effort as a community to break out of that. So now let us briefly look, with this understanding of what addiction is, and with an overall understanding of how the pandemic is impacting addiction. Now let's briefly look at various kinds of addiction and the dangers that we face. Kinds of addiction. The first kind is substance or chemical addictions. Nicotine, alcohol, marijuana, illegal drugs, prescription drugs, caffeine, chocolate, sugar, any substance or chemical that is put into the body. This can be by drinking, by inhaling, injecting, whatever the means of consumption, the substance enters the body. Now, we already looked at how these substances manipulate the brain and how people are turning to alcohol and drugs and other substances to cope with the pandemic. I showed you some statistics. All over the world, we are really heading into just such a disastrous time. Our residential centers in India are full. A lot of people are calling in because addictions are going out of control. People are getting desperate. People are resorting to all kinds of behaviors. There are other addictions let's briefly touch on them. Food addictions. In the last 20 to 30 years, food addictions have been on the rise. The food industry has been doing their best to make foods addictive. The way they set it up. 93.3 million Americans, roughly 40%, are affected by obesity, a condition closely associated with numerous health hazards. Now, with the pandemic and people being shut in, we are in the danger of some serious health challenges because people are locked inside. Children and youth need exercise. They're no longer in school. They're all just stuck at home, sitting in one place. So we need to schedule times for outdoor activities. Of course, now with this horrible weather, everybody's shut in, but as soon as the weather improves, communities and families have to make plans to actively involve in hikes or regular exercise. Friends, we have communities. Thank God for that. Get together with communities and prioritize and plan these things. The next group of addictions that I'd like to touch on can be categorized under what I call fantasy addictions. fantasy addictions. The phone, media, movie watching, video games, social media addictions. Now, the way fantasy addictions work is that it detaches you from reality. I mean, you can temporarily escape into a virtual world. Now, with the pandemic and isolation, media addictions are rising rapidly. Sometimes people don't realize the negative effect of media addiction. See, apart from the physical effects on people and youth and children not being interested in physical activities, the health risk, obesity, and other dangers to our children. Recently, we did a seminar of the challenges our youth face where we looked at some of these hidden dangers. Apart from the obvious physical consequences, media addiction can cause serious psychological damage. The more addicted children are to media, the more isolated they are from the environment. Social interactions are reducing. People are developing very poor social skills. Now, the whole social media world is a fantasy world. If you take the social media away from the person, you know what the first thing is they say, I am bored. The real world looks very dull. I mean, there's absolutely no joy in the real world. People don't want to hang out with families, relationships break down, family and society break down. There's huge psychological damage. See, we have to learn to interact with the real world. We want our children and our youth to learn to interact with the real world. Life happens with social skills. If we are socially awkward and don't know how to interact with people, then we are actually setting ourselves up for more isolation. Among the children and youth, bullying is on the rise. Now with social media, we have cyberbullying, which is 24 hours non-stop. At least when they're going to school, you go to school, you can come back home and the bullying is over. But now you have the phone and the bully chases you around. There is such an increase in suicides among young people. It's shocking. Just recently, I came to know of some social media influencers who are found dead. Suicide. Because you can never match up to the fantasy world. We can never match up to the fantasy world. Fantasy world is all make-believe. Many young people, especially young girls, have a lot of struggle with self-image and so many problems. All goes back to media addiction. What's the solution? Well, we have to be intentional. Families, communities, societies, be intentional. First we recognize that there is a problem, and then we take steps. Now you have to try to implement media-free times. Arrange for family time, watch a movie, have a media-free activity. These are intentional choices and schedules that you have to make. Let's move on. The next major addiction is under behavior and process addiction is sex addiction or love and sex addiction. Under that, you have relationships, pornography, prostitution, and again, when you go back to the isolation and you have people more on media, there's a grave danger of being pulled into this dangerous enslavement. These websites are just one click away. One click away. And we definitely don't want our children stumbling on any of these websites. This is a massive subject by itself. These addictions, especially these love and sex addictions, are so dangerous. You know why it's so dangerous? Because it's so secretive in nature. When it comes to alcohol and drugs, if somebody is drunk, you know he's drunk. But when it comes to this, you can just hide it, and it has huge devastations to the family. Not only social damage, psychological damage, family breakdown. Love and sex addictions are one of the rampant addictions. You know, the porn industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And we as communities, we have to make room for people to reach out if they need help. So, you know, we as an organization, we have put ourselves out here. Life Challenge. You can contact us. Let's look at the next one. Again, under behavior and process, we have something that is money-related addictions. This is shopping addiction, hoarding, and gambling. Now, of course, with the pandemic, maybe people are not spending that much money on shopping or hoarding and gambling. But today's problem with the pandemic is the debt or the financial pressures that people are facing. See, with the current unemployment situation because of the pandemic, many small businesses have been shut down. Thousands of middle-class families are in crisis, and many are going into panic mode. See, there's no reason for irrational decisions. See, we are all faced with a serious global challenge. All we need to do is sit down, take a stock of the present situation, and look to the future. You know, friends, there is no point looking at the past with regret. I wish I made better financial decisions. Why did we buy this? What a waste. I mean, all those things are done. Let the past behind. Look to the future one step at a time. You know, apart from the financial pressure inside the family, many close-knit communities are in danger of social pressure. All over the world, people are downsizing, making some crucial financial decisions because the world has changed as we know it. Of course, the government is sending in stimulus packages, but there is no free money. I don't know if the organizers of this seminar have organized for some financial management related seminar, but I think that would be an excellent seminar to have for people to take good financial decisions and to handle our families in this pandemic affected world. Now, with all the stress around, domestic violence is on the rise. Families are unable to cope with all the challenges, which leads to pretty stressful environments at home. And you club that with alcoholism and other addictions, you're looking at some very volatile situations. You know, we've already been together for about 35 minutes now. And so before we finish today's seminar, after that, we're going to have some time for question and answers. I want to just look at some general guidelines on how we can effectively manage the challenges before us. This is from the National Institute of Mental Health. Take break from the news. I mean, that's a wise statement. Today's news is just filled with negative. Everywhere you turn. See, yes, we know the world has its challenges. That is there. We understand that. But between politics and pandemic and world events, I personally feel that we should regulate how much news we allow to get into our minds. I mean, we can put a filter. The news is just cycle just keeps going on and on and on. And you know, our mental health is affected because of news. Take a break from the news. Protect our minds. Our minds only process and make decisions based on what we put in. You put a filter in what you let in, then your mind is better equipped to make the right choices. Another thing is set goals and priorities. If you need to make some important decisions, don't be afraid to consider them. Some people, you know, it's good for us to look at the situation, take a stock of the situation, and make those decisions. It may be a hard decision, but you make the best decision for your family. Take care of your body is one of the guidelines. Be intentional in taking care of your body, your mind, and spirit. I mean, we speak a lot about the body and mind, and both of them are important. But don't neglect the human spirit. If you have a strong spirit, you can ride over every challenge. Discouragement and anxiety are also spiritual conditions. So yes, I understand that we generally try to classify them as mental health conditions, but there are very effective spiritual solutions to these problems as well. Connect with others. Connect with the community. Have some friends, close friends with whom you can be real. Have some real close friendships where you can share without having to wear the mask all the time. See, if you're having an addiction problem and somebody in your family is struggling, reach out and get help. Addiction will not just go away over time. It gets worse and worse. There are lots of resources around. You cannot get help if you don't ask for it. So friends, I'm hats off to the organizers for putting together such an important seminar, and I just wish that our families would take this seriously. Our young people, pay attention. There are lots of areas you got to pay attention. Parents, let me tell you, newsflash, parents, you're easy to fool. Sometimes we parents think that, no, we know everything. No, we don't know everything. So we need each other. Families, societies, communities. Connect with others. So as an immigrant community and other communities, we have excellent social networks. Connect. And you have resource people everywhere. I know in Chicago area, and with all the excellent resources that you have, reach out to them and get help. You can contact us at info@lifechallenge.com. This is our email ID. But reach out and find help where you are. If you need some help, you can contact us. We're going to have a time of question and answers. And I'd just like to give you some guidelines on that. Please ask general questions. I mean, I don't want to cross into confidentiality. If you ask personal questions, it'll be difficult for me to answer. So if you have a situation that needs confidential help, then you can contact us or one of the organizers in the community. Contact the church or the community group, and this is a time for us to hold hands together. This is a time for us to club together, join together, help one another. My prayer is that God will help us navigate through these challenging times and protect our families. Once again, thank you all for taking this time, and I consider it a great honor. This is my life passion, as Sabi said. I was on the other side of the fence for many, many years. And the life of freedom that I enjoy, I just want as many people to enjoy the same freedom. And, by God's grace, for 17 years, we've been able to do that, and we continue to do that. And I pray that all of you in this forum would take this today's seminar, and let's see how we can help our families, help our young people, and help our community. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Binish J. Matthew, for sharing your PowerPoint slides and the knowledge and wisdom with the group. Now we have some time for some question and answers session. Let's see. Okay, we have a question from Sabi Kolat. What are some of the common relapse triggers? Is there any realistic coping strategy that can effectively prevent relapse of the problem?
So when you talk about relapse triggers, I mean, one of the first things about relapsing is when people let down their their defenses. I mean, many times people have this false notion that I'm free and I'm able to handle it, but there are some real triggers. One good way to understand that is HALT. That's a good guideline. HALT, halt. H is for hungry, A is for angry, L is for lonely, and T is for tired. So this you can use as a guideline. These are, all four of them are triggers. So hungry, angry, lonely, tired. I mean, it's self-care that we are talking about. It's a journey. Nobody can ever say I've completely recovered. That's it. I don't have to be cautious anymore. No, it's self-care. It's a journey. So we continue to walk on that journey.
Okay, thank you for that. A question from Sudhir Nambiar. Is there any relation to drug, alcohol addiction and gender? Which gender, if there is, which gender is more vulnerable? Is there anything like that?
Well, I don't have the exact statistics, but I think addiction can affect male or female. Of course, there are challenges as far as parenting is concerned, women, pregnancy, and things like that. But other than those dynamics, I don't have the right numbers to give you that. Of course, in India and other places, we have restrictions as far as freedom for women and freedom for men. And some of those sociological restraints may be there in preventing people from, the freedom to go out and indulge in these things. But genetically, I'm not sure of any differences as far as how it affects.
Yeah, and maybe when people are put into different situations, you can see if males are affected more than females, given the situation. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Is there a question from Roy Matthew? Is there a correlation between addiction and heredity?
Now that's a very it's a question that has been through a lot of debate, and there are people who say that it is. But this is the way I want to look at it. I think the inclination is higher if there's addiction in the family already. So the inclination towards drugs and towards alcohol. So if you have a father at home or a parent at home with alcohol, then I think the inclination towards that is greater. But I'm not sure I would say that the son is somehow in a situation where his tendency is greater. I don't want to say that. I don't want to put him in a weak standing. But there is a greater inclination. So I would leave it at that.
Okay. I think you must have answered this question to a certain extent, but Sabi's is asking, despite serious suffering and loss, why is addiction so hard to get out of? I think that was answered a little bit. Brian, is there anything you want to add?
So, as we spoke about, we spoke about the brain reward system, and we have these chemicals in our brain. It's natural for everyone. Or we have these pleasure triggers that come from regular life. That's when a mother loves a child. When we eat some good food, these are just natural ways for us to live life. Now, when we have serious suffering and loss, we see, okay, now your pleasure center is not being activated. And so for people who have learned how to manipulate this pleasure center, so the moment they have any suffering, any loss, the slightest depression, they feel that they know the answer to self-medicate. And so while people who have never taken alcohol are going to face the suffering and they're going to ride out the storm, the person who's got the alcohol problem will immediately turn to the alcohol, because he knows that I can try to use that to self-medicate. So despite the serious suffering and loss, the addiction is so hard to get out of, because this person he's caught in a cycle. I mean, he sees the loss around. And the other thing is, addiction affects your thinking. And if you see in psychiatry, and you see in people with serious mental health issues, we have people who have had long-term addiction problems, and their ability to think has been brought down. And if you don't have understanding, if you don't have the ability to process, if you're not able to look at your situation, the doctor can say, one more drink and your liver is in such a bad condition, one more drink and you will die, and the person doesn't get to seem to understand. He doesn't seem to just get it, and we wonder what's going on. Well, looks like his thinking capacity is affected. The brain is affected. So even with all the suffering, the loved ones may look at the situation and say, how come you don't get it? But the person who is in the cycle, he doesn't see it. It's a very sad situation. I have seen in our work in the last 17 years, I have seen people who came to our rehabs. The first time they came, they had much better capacity in the mental capacity to handle and grasp. He showed up 5 years later, he's not able to get it. Now some of them are just walking down the street up and down, totally almost, unable to think for themselves. So it's a very sad disease, and it needs intervention. If we see somebody in the struggle, sometimes we have to intervene. We'll have to go in and do an intervention. But that's the best thing that you can do for your loved one.
Okay. All right. Question from Mr. George. What is the most common addictive substance used by younger folks, younger generations? You're asking about the drugs, yeah.
So one of the recent things that have come up is something called vaping. And those of you who have not heard about it, it's you can keep it quite secretive, and the youth are just getting onto this, and that has really caused a lot of struggle, and schools are beginning to recognize this is a problem. So for younger generations, if you talk about substance, of course, that's one of the main things. The second thing is now marijuana is getting legalized in many places. Now this is, again, it's a very sensitive subject. Now how dangerous is marijuana? Some people say there's no problem at all. But let me tell you, there are a lot of studies that have shown that marijuana has caused a lot of psychotic symptoms and problems. Now, again, there are studies on both sides, and they say marijuana is harmless. And I know the argument that nobody's died of a marijuana overdose and it's natural. Well, there are a lot of things that's natural. Poisonous mushroom is natural. I mean, just because it's natural doesn't mean you take it. But, it's an entire industry, and there's a lot of arguments about these things. But a lot of young people are accepting marijuana, and, it's legal. So they're slowly getting into that. And that's a very dangerous substance as well. So these are some of the things that I'm seeing. Of course, there are party drugs, and there are other things that are being moved around in schools. So as far as substance is concerned, these are the things that I can think of.
Okay. All right. A question again from Mr. Sabi Kola. Is it true that the younger the person is, the addictive lifestyle is harder to get out of? So the younger you are, harder to get out of.
Well, the younger you are, your brain, especially before 18, your brain is still forming, still developing, and if you start triggering and manipulating your brain reward system, then you're just setting yourself up for a lot of trouble. So young people, young children getting into addiction and substance abuse, you can just imagine the kind of manipulation that's going on in their minds, in their brains, and the kind of dangers that sets them up. Now, there is another psychological situation to this. When I was running rehabs here in the US, in Oakland, I was in charge of a center here. And I had a young 19-year-old guy, and he was there, and he said, well, I'm young, I can change anytime I want. So psychologically, they think they can change anytime they want, but they don't want to. And so, you have a psychological situation there as well. But substance manipulation of the brain at a young age is an incredibly dangerous situation, and I just heartbroken when I hear about young children getting stuff from their parents' drugs and they use it, and some of the horrible stories that come out of that. So yes, it is, the younger you get into the addiction lifestyle, it can get pretty hard to get out of, especially if you keep it prolonged and sustained for a long time.
Yeah. A question from Sarah Gabriel is, what are some of the warning signs to identify addictive behavior? So I think she's asking about the early warning signs.
Yes, so especially from parents and children, some of the early warning signs is you will begin to see a real change in the person's attitude, the way he is. He gets withdrawn, there'll be more secrecy, there will be poor sleep patterns, you will see emotional changes, you will see sudden anger. You watch out for some secretive, behavior or some strange contacts. But the overall behavior, especially withdrawn, is one of the key criteria. Just watch out for that. I mean, at the same time, when we go into adolescence, we do have some changes. That's natural, but you've got to watch that and be and observe. Bloodshot eyes, strange things in the pockets. When you do laundry, if you find strange things in the pockets, I mean, there are a lot of warning signs. Email me and we can send you some information on that.
Okay. A question from Johnson Telachellur. How can we make someone realize that they do have an addiction?
Well, that is the challenge, because the first step of getting recovery from addiction is to come out of denial. And so a person will say, well, I don't have an addiction problem. Well, he's in denial. So one of the things that we can do, as loved ones, you are the first counselor to your loved one. So the job of a counselor is to hold a mirror. Mirror means it's like you're holding a rear view mirror, and you begin to explain to the person and try to get them to a point of understanding and say, okay, has addiction caused any changes in your life? I mean, if somebody's lost a couple of jobs and they've been late at work and they've been hospitalized a couple of times, then you would have to engage the person, because understanding is very key. Recovery cannot start till you get some thread of understanding. So you can make a comparison, look at the things that you have lost because of addiction, whether it's health, whether it's job, whether it's finances, whether it's broken relationships, lack of respect. I mean, there's a whole list of things, but engage in a conversation. And the other thing is, I'd like to stress on this. If you find somebody's got an addiction problem, try to approach them individually. Sometimes we go as an entire group of people and try to do this intervention. It may not really work, because people can get very defensive when there's a big group of people. So personal engagement in a conversation and trying to hold a rear view mirror and trying to bring them through a realization and a comparison would be one of the first steps. But you have to overcome denial before somebody can volunteer to get help. So that is some of the ways that you can help people to accept that they have an addiction problem.
Yep, that's true. Okay, a question from Pinto Kanampalli. What are the implications of babies born with addiction from the mother? So it looks like the mother was an addict, and so when the baby is born, what are the implications after birth? And is your organization helping those people, those kinds of people, mothers?
Yeah, fetal alcohol syndrome, I tell you, you see the children born. It's a very sad situation. I mean, these are women who, while they're during their pregnancy, some of these children are born with serious mental health challenges. and it takes a lot of effort for them. No, our organization is not directly helping such children. What we do, we are helping children who are born with HIV. So in our school in India where we are, so the fathers were heroin addicts, and so they had HIV, and the children are born with HIV, and then the fathers, they pass on. So we are helping those children. But as far as fetal alcohol syndrome and other things, no, we are not doing. We haven't done that. We have some children outreach programs in India. We are doing something in Nepal right now, and these are children. Some of them could have been born with some addiction situations, and we have some outreach events outreach life clubs, and we have tuition centers, after school programs for these children. So those are some of the things that we are doing. We wish we could do more, but here in the US, no, we don't do much work here in the US. Our work is more in South Asia. Thank you for that question, Pinto.
Okay, a question from Manoj Matthew. So with people with pornography addiction, are there some practical steps that you would recommend?
Pornography addiction is one of, like I said, it's one of the darkest addictions because you can keep it very secretive. So with pornography addiction, what happens is the images, every repetitive behavior that you have, it makes pathways in the brain. So you end up having these deep pathways in the brain. With porn and other things, those images, it's like scarring your brain with images. And so with that situation with porn addiction, there are, of course, self-help groups that you have to get into, but then you'll have to really identify the behavioral patterns that you follow in the ritual of porn addiction. See, every addiction is a ritual. You have a certain way, you have a certain time, 11 p.m., you're sitting at the computer and, okay. Now, you have to identify those things if you're really serious about that. You identify those behavioral patterns and now you begin to change it. Take some people into confidence. You'll have to have some accountability. I know it's going to be very difficult sometimes, with families, but you have to have some accountability. There are filters that you can put in. It'll make your searches very difficult. You'll have different kinds of filters that you can put in for your browsers. There are many ways that you can handle it, but people with pornography addiction, you can break out of addiction for some time and it can easily get triggered. That's the problem with pornography addiction. It triggers very easily. You need to have eye control. You need to have mind control. You've got to really watch yourself because the triggers are everywhere. And so with porn addiction, the best thing would be to get yourself into a group, a community, and then if you can take your spouse into confidence, then that's an excellent thing. But sometimes spouses are not able to handle that. But you can get help with them as well, and fight it out. But it's a very serious addiction. It can have long-term consequences.
Okay. A question from Sabi Kolat. So if a person has both mental illness and substance abuse, which area would you think would be needed to be treated first? Is it mental illness or substance abuse first?
Okay, so this is a very important question. Thank you, Sabi, for asking that. Today we have the field of psychiatry, and it's an excellent field. It helps people with chemical imbalance, and I understand that. Now, when a person is on drugs and when he is under the influence, there are some certain symptoms that he has that if you take that person to a psychiatrist, what the psychiatrist will do is he will look at him and say, okay, what are your symptoms? Tick, tick, tick. All right, okay, you are now into this or disorder. And he puts him into this disorder and gives him medication for that. Now, that is what is called dual diagnosis. That I think is very harmful because the person was not born with that disorder. So because he took drugs and because of addiction, he's showing some symptoms that's making the psychiatrist compartmentalize him into a box. And then you feed him some psychiatric medications. And I've seen so many cases of people ending up totally in a vegetative state. I mean, they just get numbed down. They lose all their enthusiasm in life, and they put a tag on them. Now, I'm not saying that schizophrenia and other things, that those are real conditions. I understand that. But when a person comes, the first thing is to find out, okay, are you on drugs? Well, let's clean up that first before we make a evaluation on you. Because if you make an evaluation while the person is having these symptoms, then I don't think that evaluation is a true evaluation, because it's mixed up with the addiction, especially with marijuana. I mean, people can get psychotic with marijuana depending on what you're taking. And if you take one of them and put them to a psychiatrist, then they will give them, I don't know if you're a psychiatrist here. Doctor, I thank you for the work that you do. I'm not against psychiatry. It's a good field. But as far as dual diagnosis is concerned, if the patient has an addiction problem, first, let's get rid of the addiction problem. Then we can have a clean slate to make a proper diagnosis. If not, the diagnosis is failed. So the first thing is get the substance abuse out, then we can make a good diagnosis. Thank you, Sabi, for that question.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. A question from Dr. Elizabeth Mamin. So how often do you encounter underlying psychiatric illnesses like bipolar, schizophrenia that are triggered by substance abuses? So she's asking the frequency, some statistics, I think.
So, okay, so this is another side of the question. So there are people who have bipolar or schizophrenia, and they had that before they took the drugs, right? And some of them have resorted to certain drugs to help them deal with that situation. So that's a different part of the question. So yes, we have had that triggered by substance abuse. Now, I wouldn't know how to quantify that. I would say there are people who probably made it worse. How often do you encounter underlying psychiatric illnesses triggered by substance abuse? So I wouldn't know if it's triggered by substance abuse. I mean, if the person has been born without it, and if he's showing symptoms of it after he's taken the drug, then I would say first take him off the drug, and then we can do a test. Does that answer the question?
Not sure if she can respond.
Maybe there's a psychiatrist here. They would probably able to shed some more light on that.
Yeah. Okay. Am I missing anything? Are there any more questions in the chat? No. Don't see any more questions unless I miss any. Anyone can chime in, please, if I missed any questions.
There was a good one from Usha George.
Sure, George.
Kind of similar one I asked.
Similar. Okay, there's a question. Okay, I don't see that. Maybe I'll come back to that. Tommy Metipara, can you give us some positive recovery cases? Like, what's the rate of successful recovery?
Yeah, like I said, recovery is a journey. It's a life journey. So sometimes we have ways to measure and say, okay, if you've been clean for 2 years, then we can put you under the recovery category. So positive stories is this. As far as our organization is concerned, all our residential centers are staffed by people who came through with addiction problems. And today we have, there are some numbers of 70%, there are numbers of 60%, but it's a little difficult to give you a recovery rate or percentage. But people who are able to put in a lifelong recovery pattern, they are the ones who are able to walk in recovery. So it's a constant ongoing walk. I know in AA and other places, they say once an addict, always an addict. Now, I don't believe once an addict, always an addict. I would say once an addict, always the danger of falling into addiction. So that's just the way I want to look at that. I think the other question was...
yeah, I just saw it. So thank you for the question from Pinto. for forwarding the question for Usha George. Our community is so rigid and refusing to accept addiction and seeking right treatment. How can we educate our community to accept this issue as a serious problem and get treatment? Oh, so it's the awareness insight, I think she's referring to. How do we work on that?
So I think today's seminar was a good start. I mean, it's an excellent thing for the community to take a step like this. And I think as you continue to do this, in the different communities, we want to let the community know that there is help out there. And this is not something that you have to keep hidden. And, we have a lot of social stigma attached to this, especially parents. I just want to say, if your child is taking drugs and alcohol, please don't take it personally. Please don't put it on yourself that, you're a bad parent. That's not the way it works. Everybody has a choice to make. And we as parents, we do our best. We try our best. And if the children make it's a choice, then, okay, now we need to get help. And so as a community, I would request the World Malayalee Council to have some contact numbers that families can contact and get help. And, we can see how to make that happen. But the first thing is for the community to know that the community at large recognizes this as a problem, which you're already doing, and that we are available, and given some numbers and let them contact. And if we need to do awareness seminars, it's good for young people to get addiction awareness seminars. Now, I don't know if they have it in schools. I know they have it in some schools. They have the DARE program and other programs. But as a community, it's good for our children to have awareness. Now, there are a couple of other things that again, for immigrant communities is important to understand. Let me see how I can say this carefully. When you're in good company, races don't matter. I mean, you can hang out with any race at any time. No problem. No problem. When you're in good company. But when you're in bad company, then suddenly people get very racial. And many immigrant families, I've seen that the young boy is out there hanging out with some people, and then suddenly he's alienated. And so we got to be very careful about this. We need our young people to understand. Okay? As long as it's good company, wonderful. But if you're out there taking drugs and hanging out with the wrong people, and if you're alone, you have one Malayali boy hanging out with some people, you may get isolated. And so these are some areas that we have to really let our young people know. I mean, the prisons and all that, some awareness is important for our young people. I would say it's, rather than the people on the street introduce alcohol and drugs to our children, we should be able to proactively let them know this is what happens when you take drugs, this is what happens when you take alcohol, this is the way it affects you, and that's an important education that we can do as a community. So that's something that you can work on.
Okay, thank you for that extensive explanation, Dinush. Okay, so I don't see any more questions. And again, if you have any personal questions, please email it to the email that Dinush J. Matthew had shared with us. Now we move on to the next part of the agenda, which is saying thanks to all the speakers for today. And then I cordially invite Mrs. Sarah Gabriel, who is very, very much known to all of us. She's been a very active member, even for the nurses organization. She was one of the founders of the National Association of the Indian Nurses of America. And I welcome her to say a word of thanks to all the speakers. Go ahead.
Thank you, Nancy. Oh, wow. I don't know where to start. And Dinush, it was one of the best introductory type of class, but there was so much that is there we have to learn. And you have touched everything pretty much. But we could have spent a day for this particular topic. And I really want to say that from one of the point, which is the social stigma attached with addiction, especially to our Indian community. And so we try to hide, and then people don't want to come out because people ostracize them, the one who is addicted. So the victim doesn't get enough help or resources to take care of the problem. That's one of the biggest problem our community face. After saying that, I want to get into my job which was given to me as on behalf of the World Malayali Council of Chicago Province. I want to really appreciate and give you thanks for embarking such a rewarding type of vision you had in organizing and starting this project that you have. And I admire and love the theme you had, which is transforming lives one life at a time, so that is what matters, one life at a time. If each one of us can do somewhere like that, that would be tremendous. And we really appreciate you spending the time with us, and it was amazing. And I can't imagine within the past 15, 17 years, you have accomplished so much with the programs, and you have helped thousands of people, it appears. And it is a challenge for us, our province here, to really follow up with this for additional classes or awareness, and we should take that challenge. And we want you to help us with that, and we'll be coming back to you to help more things towards that, because there is a big problem of all type of addiction among us. Each one of us or something or other, we could make it better. So we want to thank you for being such a champion for transforming people's life and one life at a time. And we thank you for that. And we hope we can come back and see you again in other programs in the future. And enough thanks is not sufficient to really see or tell you how we appreciate what you are doing. And I also want to appreciate and acknowledge on behalf of the World Malayali Council, Chicago Province, to Monica Zuckers and the lovely Verghese. I'm kind of combining them together because they kind of go hand in hand. Lovely become a common name for us and Praveen in our community, because we feel that Praveen was one of our child, and we can relate to it, and we acknowledge and we really are amazed the tenacity and the courage you have, Lovely, to really go after the perpetrators of this incident, which is such a tragic incident. And I don't think it will ever be erased from your mind or anybody's mind, but you turn it around and making it as a voice to be heard and acknowledged and appreciated by everybody. And then we want to wish you in the future to come to the point that you'll be able to get justice for your son and justice for our community as a whole. And so we want to thank you for coming. I know you came from the memorial service, and I know 14th was the day that Praveen left us, and that is Valentine's Day. So that was something always remembered by our community, along with you, as a everlasting memory of Praveen, that he really lives in our heart and our mind. And at Zuckers, you have been really a voice with Lovely and taking this as a champion for to get justice for Praveen. And through your talk and radio shows that you brought it out and made Praveen's and Lovely's incident as a national event. I mean, in fact, it is an international. People all over the world knows about this. So we want to thank you for coming and spending the time with us. And on behalf of the World Malayali Council, Chicago Province, and the leaders and the organizers of this program, I want to extend our hearty appreciation and thank you for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sarah, for that extensive explanation of how thankful we are for the speakers. Okay, now we move on to for some final remarks from the global region and the provincial areas. And to lead this conversation, I invite Mr. Pinto Kanampalli, who is the Secretary of the America region. Mr. Pinto.
Yep. Thank you, Ms. Ann Lucas. Thank you so much. I really wanted to thank Mr. Dinesh Matthews for this wonderful presentation. It was very informative, and I wish that we can have a special seminars on each slides that he was presenting on his presentation. We can have a sequence of presentation on taking each slide from his. It was so informative and a lot of information for all the community people who joined us. Okay, and I just wanted to thank Mrs. Lovely Varghese, and I am extending our prayers, especially on this day today, since it's Praveer's Memorial Day. We extend on behalf of America region, we extend our prayers and condolences. Okay, and also I'm thanking Monica Zuckers for joining us and giving her life experience, and helping. And on behalf of our community and America region, we are thanking her also, helping Lovely Varghese to get the cases up in front of the court. Okay, and we have our team's global leaders and regional leaders and provincial leaders joined us today. So let me invite our America region president, Mr. Sudhir Nambiar, to say a few words. Mr. Sudhir Nambiar.
Thank you, Pinto. Good evening to all our delegates and WMC officials. This is highly informative session from all our speakers. It was touching. Binu Matthew, Monica Zuckers, Lovely Varghese, we share your loss. We are lucky to have all our speakers today. As the president of WMC America region, I humbly thank them on behalf of America region. Congratulations to our Matthew Abraham for accepting Vice President of America region position. He is leading our project on Pravasi Helpline. Probably we need to add the addiction line on to him also. So on this occasion, I would like to inform you on the Student Engagement Program, SCP of WMC. Please go to wmcamerica.org to enroll your middle and high school and college students. If you all love WMC, please do this and ask your friends, kids to enroll, and we can take this to the next level. Imagine we have the same topic with our students across America. There's a big change. There's a lot of advantages, voluntary opportunities. So please encourage our kids to join the SCP program. The last date is 28th February. There is one more week. So enroll them and help them. Appreciate Chicago province officers, Chairman Mataguti, President Benjamin, Secretary Thomas Recruz, and Thomas, Treasurer Koshi George, and all EC members for bringing this event. And Ann Lucas for wonderfully moderating the session. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Sudhir Nambiar. Let me invite our America region chairman, Mr. Philip Thomas, to say a few words.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Respected Global President Gopalapillai, PC Matthew, the Vice President, the Regional President, Secretary, and all my team, especially the Chairman of Chicago Province, the President, the Secretary, and all the team who presented this, who had planned for this. It's a wonderful program. I wish our younger generation should watch this. One of the best programs I have ever seen. And this kind of thoughts need to come back from every province, and they need to educate their children most than us. It is they need to understand this. And my grandson was here. I just called him. I told him to stay with me for a few minutes. The moment he heard that, he said, Dad, I want to go away. I already knows all about it. But I am concerned about the second generation, because in this country, we need to have more education. My question to all of you, does the government do a good job in preventing addiction? I wanted to see that. As a World Malayalee Council, I like to invite some of the global leaders to discuss this with the global people, like global people who are dealing with addiction. How can we treat, how can we educate in the way the government can do it to the small children? This is my hope. I wanted to do that, and I'm personally trying to deal with some of my colleagues in the government level and see how can we implement this in the school level, as well as a ministry can be formed in the central level or in the regional level or in the state level so that we can stop this. I like to conclude thanking you all. This is one of the best program I have ever watched, and trying to protect the younger generation in America region. And thank you all. And I like to stop it now. I have a lot of things to talk about it, but I'll take another opportunity, another time. So this time is very short. Let me conclude again, thanking you for this wonderful program.
Thank you, Mr. Philip Thomas. Please make sure that we limit our speech in 1 minute. It's almost 2 hours. So whoever is going to speak, please make sure limit in 1 minute. Let me invite our global president, Mr. Gopala Pillai.
Thank you, Pinto. I just wanted to congratulate and thanks to Binush Matthew for a wonderful presentation. A wonderful presentation, very informative, and we are thankful to you. Also, I wanted to thank the Chicago province for organizing this event, and we are seeing more and provinces organizing such events, which are very helpful to our community. Keep you good work on.
And again, she came back here and said her true story, why that incident occurred. That was very good for others. And also, what I see here in the city council, like Benjamin said, one of the important items I projected is fighting against the substance use, actually. So this is very important subject. Like Philip Thomas said, the region chairman said, the global committee, I think the next EC meeting is coming. I think I will point out this can be a global project because worldwide the substance use is increasing. And the WMC American region also presented a short film to give awareness about substance use. His name is The Stallion. It is already uploaded in the YouTube. We can see. So WMC as a whole, we are working towards that goal, giving awareness against the substance use, actually. So I appreciate the American region leaders and province leaders and all of the participants today. And thank you for your time. I invite you guys tomorrow around 6 p.m. I have arranged one meeting, Zoom meeting about my city council publicity. I invite all of you to participate and support me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. P.C. Matthew. Let me invite Advisory Board Chairman, America Region, Mr. Chako Koikilet. Mr. Chako Koikilet, can you please unmute and say a few words? Okay, I will come back to him. Do we have our Vice Chairperson, Shanta Pillai? Okay, our America Region Vice Chairman, Mr. Philip Maret.
Hello. വളരെ നല്ല ഇൻഫോർമേറ്റീവ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു സെമിനാർ ആയിരുന്നു നടത്തിയത്. പ്രത്യേകിച്ചും ഇതുപോലെയുള്ള സെമിനാറുകൾ നമ്മുടെ വരും തലമുറകൾക്ക് വളരെയധികം പ്രയോജനം നൽകും എന്നുള്ളതിൽ സംശയമില്ല. ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു സെമിനാർ സംഘടിപ്പിച്ച ചിക്കാഗോ പ്രോവിൻസിന് എൻ്റെ എല്ലാവിധ നന്ദിയും അറിയിച്ചുകൊള്ളുന്നു. ഒപ്പം ഈ ഒരു സെമിനാർ എത്ര കാലം വേണമെങ്കിലും നമുക്ക് കാണാവുന്ന തരത്തിൽ A1 TV-യിലൂടെ യൂട്യൂബിലും ഫേസ്ബുക്കിലും എല്ലാം ഉണ്ട്. അത് ആർക്ക് വേണമെങ്കിലും എപ്പോൾ വേണമെങ്കിലും അതിൻ്റെ ലിങ്കുകൾ ഉപയോഗിച്ച്
കാണുകയോ ആർക്കെങ്കിലുമൊക്കെ ഷെയർ ചെയ്യുകയോ ചെയ്യാം. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും ചിക്കാഗോ പ്രൊവിൻസിനും പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് സെമിനാർ നടത്തിയ എല്ലാവർക്കും പ്രത്യേകമായി നന്ദി ഒരിക്കൽ കൂടി അറിയിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് നിർത്തുന്നു. നന്ദി, നമസ്കാരം.
Thank you, Mr. Philip Marat. Let me invite our VP admin, Mr. Eldo Peter. Mr. Eldo Peter.
Thank you, Pinto. I congratulate the province leaders to conduct this seminar, especially the chairman, president, secretary, treasurer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eldo. Let me invite Mr. Johnson Talachillo, our VP organization, to say a few words.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's such a wonderful, very informative session, the seminar that we had. We thank you on behalf of WMC to Benush Matthew, and our heart goes out to lovely Verghese for her loss. I mean, all the things that we have discussed, I'm pretty sure, most of us here in the audience are adults. We need to find a way to transfer this information to the younger generation also. As long as we can do that, this is going to really help us and all to get over with this situation. So thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Let me invite Mr. George K. John, VP of America region, and also he is the Secretary of New York province. Mr. George K. John.
Sir, thank you very much. വളരെ സന്തോഷമുണ്ട്. വളരെ നല്ല ഇപ്പോഴത്തെ സാഹചര്യങ്ങൾ അനുസരിച്ച് അഡിക്ഷൻ എന്ന ഒരു വിഷയത്തെ പറ്റി മിസ്റ്റർ ബിനീഷ് മാത്യു വളരെ നല്ല രീതിയിൽ കാര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ അവതരിപ്പിച്ചു. നമുക്കെല്ലാം മനസ്സിലായി അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ ഒരു ഇതിനെപ്പറ്റിയുള്ള വിവരങ്ങൾ എത്രമാത്രം ഉണ്ടെന്നുള്ളത് നമുക്ക് മനസ്സിലായി. അത് ഏറ്റവും വിലപ്പെട്ടതാണ്. അത് നമ്മളെല്ലാവരും കേട്ടു. പക്ഷേ എൻ്റെ ഒരു ചോദ്യം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്, നമുക്ക് ഈ സമൂഹത്തിന് വേണ്ടി നമുക്കിതിന് എന്ത് ചെയ്യാൻ സാധിക്കും? അതൊരു ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ മാർക്കാണ്. നമ്മൾ ഓരോരുത്തരും നമ്മൾ എന്ത് ചെയ്യണം? ഞാൻ എൻ്റെ ഒരു പേഴ്സണൽ ഉദാഹരണം പറഞ്ഞാൽ, 2 ദിവസം മുമ്പ് എൻ്റെ കൂടെ ജോലി ചെയ്യുന്ന ഒരു വിദ്യാർത്ഥിയാണ്. അദ്ദേഹം PAക്ക് വേണ്ടി പഠിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നു. അദ്ദേഹം എൻ്റെ അടുത്ത് ചോദിച്ചാണ്, അദ്ദേഹവും 2 മെഡിക്കേഷൻ, സൈക്കാട്രിക് 2 മെഡിക്കേഷൻ കഴിക്കുന്നു, അതിനോടൊപ്പം മരിജ്വാന എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞൊരു മെഡിസിൻ കൂടെ കഴിക്കുന്നു. എൻ്റെ അടുത്ത് ചോദിച്ചു, അങ്കിളെ ഇത് ഇത്രയും കൂടെ കഴിക്കുമ്പോൾ എന്തെങ്കിലും പ്രശ്നങ്ങളുണ്ടോ? എനിക്ക് പ്രശ്നങ്ങളുണ്ടായിരുന്നു, അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് ഞാനത് കഴിക്കുന്നത്. അപ്പം ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞു, മോനെ നീ ഒന്നും ചെയ്യണ്ട, നീ തൽക്കാലം ഈ മരിജ്വാന എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞൊരു സാധനം നിർത്തിയിട്ട് നീ ഒരു ദിവസം ഒരു 5 പ്രാവശ്യമെങ്കിലും ദൈവമേ എന്നെ രക്ഷിക്കണമേ, ദൈവമേ എന്നെ രക്ഷിക്കണമേ എന്ന് നീ പ്രാർത്ഥിട്ട്, നീ ക്രിസ്തുവിനെ ആണെങ്കിൽ ക്രിസ്തുവിനെ വിളിക്കുക, കൃഷ്ണനാണെങ്കിൽ കൃഷ്ണനെ വിളിക്കുക, അല്ല അള്ളാഹുവിനെ ആണെങ്കിൽ അള്ളാഹുവിനെ വിളിക്കുക. ഏത് ദൈവത്തെയാണോ നീ വിളിക്കുന്നത് അത് വിളിക്കുക എന്നുള്ളത് ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞ് നിർത്തി. ഇന്നും വീണ്ടും അവൻ്റെ അടുത്ത് പറഞ്ഞുള്ളൂ. ഇത് 2ാം ദിവസമാണ്. അപ്പോൾ ഇതാണ് നമ്മുടെ ഇന്നത്തെ ലോകം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ നമുക്കിതിനെതിരെ എന്ത് ചെയ്യാനൊക്കും? ഇതിനു വേണ്ടി, സമൂഹത്തിന് വേണ്ടി നമുക്ക് എന്ത് ചെയ്യാനൊക്കും? അത് നമ്മൾ ആലോചിക്കണം, നമ്മൾ അതിനു വേണ്ടി പ്രവർത്തിക്കണം. ഇന്നത്തെ ഈ ഒരു വലിയ സെമിനാർ നടത്തിയ ചിക്കാഗോ പ്രൊവിൻസിൻ്റെ ഭാരവാഹികളെ പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് അഭിനന്ദിക്കുന്നു. പ്രസിഡന്റ്, സെക്രട്ടറി, ട്രഷറർ, ചെയർമാൻ എല്ലാവർക്കും ഇതിൻ്റെ പ്രത്യേക അഭിനന്ദനങ്ങൾ ന്യൂയോർക്ക് പ്രൊവിൻസിൻ്റെ പേരിൽ അറിയിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് എൻ്റെ വാക്കുകൾ വിരമിക്കുന്നു. നന്ദി, നമസ്കാരം.
Thank you, Mr. George K. John. And we have one more VP of America region. He is from Chicago province, Mr. Matthews Abraham. He already spoken in the beginning. So I guess if you have anything more to add, please come on, unmute yourself and say anything. Otherwise, I can move on.
But I'm really thankful for all of you joining this wonderful seminar. Especially, I'm thanking Benush Matthew, lovely Verghese, Monica Zuckers to deliver a good message during this occasion. Especially the organizers, all of them. And Sabi, he has a very fond friendship with Benush Matthew. So I'm thanking him too. And Sarah, Gabriel, and Anne. Once again, thank you everybody for participating in this informative section. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. We have our Women's Forum chairperson, Shoshami Andrews. She was there earlier and it seems like she already left. So I am inviting Usha George, the Vice Chair, to say a few words.
Thank you, Pinto. First of all, let me congratulate Chicago province for arranging such a wonderful, I don't know how to say that. It is very informative and excellent seminar. And Binush, you have an ample of knowledge about this addiction program. I think I'll be contacting you. I need your seminar to our church and other programs also to other community. It is very informative, and I wish that we have to reach out to our children, and there should be a way of giving this seminar to our children. Thank you very much. And Sarah Gabriel, I was so happy to see you there because I worked with her through the Naina. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Usha George. We have our Political Forum President, Mr. Gary Nair from South Jersey. Can you please unmute and say a few words? Okay, I will come back to him. Do we have our Health Forum President, Mary Phillip, joined? Can you please unmute? Okay, I will come back to them. Now let me go to the provinces. Let me first call the Houston Province Chairman, Mr. Roy Matthew.
Thank you, Pinto. സ്നേഹമുള്ള ചിക്കാഗോ പ്രൊവിൻസിന്റെ ഭാരവാഹികളെ, അതുപോലെ WMCയുടെ അമേരിക്ക റീജിയൻ, ഗ്ലോബൽ ആൻഡ് പ്രൊവിൻസ് ഭാരവാഹികളെ, സ്നേഹമുള്ള സഹപ്രവർത്തകരെ, നമുക്കെല്ലാം ഉപകാരപ്രദമായ ഒരു ക്ലാസ് ആണ് ഇന്ന് ചിക്കാഗോ പ്രൊവിൻസിന്റെ ആഭിമുഖ്യത്തിലൂടെ നടന്നത്. പ്രത്യേകിച്ചും ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു പ്രോഗ്രാം അറേഞ്ച് ചെയ്ത ചിക്കാഗോ പ്രൊവിൻസിനെ അഭിനന്ദിക്കുവാൻ മാത്രമായി ഞാൻ ഈ അവസരം ഉപയോഗിക്കുകയാണ്. അതോടൊപ്പം തന്നെ ഇന്ന് ക്ലാസ് എടുത്ത മോണിക്ക ലൂക്കാസ്, ലവ്ലി വർഗീസ്, അതുപോലെ ബിനൂഷ് മാത്യു എന്നിവരോടുള്ള നന്ദിയും അറിയിക്കട്ടെ. Once again, thank you very much, all the organizers and presenters. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Roy Matthew. Let me invite the President of South All Women Province, New Jersey All Women Province, Mrs. Malini Nair. Mrs. Malini Nair.
I thank you, Pinto. Special thanks to Chicago office bearers for conducting this very useful seminar. I was listening. I was busy with some household work, but I was listening to each and every point. Very informative and very valuable at this pandemic time. And special thanks to Binush for presenting it in a very appealing way. Thank you so much. Once again, let me congratulate the entire Chicago team for bringing this to us. As many of you pointed out, it's a good forum to be presented to kids. So please make sure we do have the same seminar presented again to the younger generation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Malini Nair. Let me invite Mr. Sugu Varghese from North Texas Province. He is the President of North Texas Province.
Thank you, Window. സത്യം പറഞ്ഞാല് ഇതേ കണക്കുള്ള ഇൻഫർമേറ്റീവ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള സെമിനാർ വീണ്ടും വീണ്ടും കേൾക്കാനും ആഗ്രഹം തോന്നുന്നുണ്ട്. ഇങ്ങനെയുള്ള ഒരു ഇൻഫർമേഷൻ ഉള്ള ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു സെമിനാർ നടത്തിയ ചിക്കാഗോയിലുള്ള എല്ലാ പ്രസിഡന്റ് പിന്നെ ചെയർമാനുള്ള എല്ലാവരെയും എൻ്റെ ടീമിനും അതേ കണക്ക് ഇതിൻ്റെ എഫർട്ട് എടുത്ത എല്ലാവർക്കും എൻ്റെയും, അതായത് നോർത്ത് ടെക്സാസിൻ്റെ പ്രസിഡന്റ് നിലയിൽ എൻ്റെയും എൻ്റെ ടീമിൻ്റെയും കൺഗ്രാജുലേഷൻ അറിയിക്കുന്നു. നന്ദി. വീണ്ടും ഇങ്ങനെയുള്ള സെമിനാറുകൾ വരട്ടെ എന്ന് ആത്മാർത്ഥമായി ആഗ്രഹിക്കുന്നു. നന്ദി, നമസ്കാരം. താങ്ക് യു.
Thank you, Mr. Sugu. Let me invite Georgia Province member, Mr. Anil Augustine. He is also the PR of America region. Mr. Anil Augustine, can you please unmute towards?
Yeah, thank you, Pinto. I sincerely echo the words of our leaders, the words of appreciation. In fact, I express my personal gratitude to Mr. Binosh, Dr. Binosh, and the Illinois, the Chicago province leaders, Mr. Mathukuti, Benjamin, Sri Benjamin, and Mr. Sabi Kolot for organizing this in a very effective way, such a relevant topic during this hard times that our people at large are challenged with. My sincere appreciations and prayerfully that this is effective to the desired way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anil. Let me invite the President of Houston Province, Mr. Joman Idayadil. Can you please unmute and say a few words? Mr. Joman Idayadil. Okay, let me move on to the DFW province. Chairman, Mr. Sam Matthew. Sam Matthew from DFW province. Okay, let me go to Florida province. Mr. Matthew Thomas, the chairman of Florida province.
Thank you, Mr. Pinto. ഇത്രയും മനോഹരമായ അതുപോലെ വളരെ ഇൻഫോർമേറ്റീവായ ഒരു സെമിനാർ ഓർഗനൈസ് ചെയ്ത ചിക്കാഗോ പ്രോവിൻസിന് പ്രത്യേക അഭിനന്ദനങ്ങൾ. അതുപോലെ ഇതിന് പങ്കെടുത്തിട്ടുള്ള ഓരോ കാൻഡിഡേറ്റിനും എല്ലാവർക്കും വളരെ വളരെ നല്ല ഒരു ക്ലാസ് ആയിരുന്നു. ഞാൻ മറ്റ് ഒരു പ്രോഗ്രാമിലായിരുന്നതുകൊണ്ട് ഞാനത് കേട്ടിരുന്നു, കംപ്ലീറ്റ് കേൾക്കുകയായിരുന്നു. ഇപ്പോൾ ഞാൻ മറ്റൊരു പ്രോഗ്രാമിലാണ്. എല്ലാവർക്കും വളരെ സന്തോഷമുണ്ട്. എല്ലാവർക്കും പ്രത്യേക അഭിനന്ദനങ്ങൾ. ഇത് ഓർഗനൈസ് ചെയ്ത ചിക്കാഗോയ്ക്ക് വീണ്ടും ഞങ്ങളുടെ ഫ്ലോറിഡ പ്രോവിൻസിന്റെ അഭിനന്ദനങ്ങൾ അറിയിക്കുന്നു. താങ്ക് യു വെരി മച്ച്.
Thank you, Mr. Matthew Thomas. Do we have anybody from North Jersey province? Stanley Thomas or Pradeep Menon, anybody from North Jersey? Okay, let me move on to South Jersey province. Anybody join from South Jersey? I did see them join, but it's like they already left. Okay, let me move on to the British Columbia province. Do we have Matthew V, the chairman of British Columbia province, join? Can you please unmute and say a few words? Or the President Josh Kurian from British Columbia province, Vancouver.
Yeah.
Or Elizabeth. Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Matthew, British Columbia ടീമിന്റെ നാമത്തിൽ എല്ലാവർക്കും നമസ്കാരം അറിയിക്കുന്നു. ഇന്നത്തെ ഒരു വിഷയമാണ്. മിസ്റ്റർ ബിനൂഷിന് എൻ്റെ എല്ലാ ഭാവുകാശംസകൾ അറിയിക്കുന്നു. തുടർന്നും അദ്ദേഹം ഇതുപോലുള്ള നല്ല നല്ല സെമിനാറുകൾ നടത്തുവാൻ അദ്ദേഹത്തെ അനുഗ്രഹിക്കും. അതോടൊപ്പം തന്നെ ഇതിന്റെ നടത്തിപ്പിന് വേണ്ടി പ്രവർത്തിച്ച ഷിക്കാഗോ പ്രോവിൻസ്, അതുപോലെ തന്നെ അമേരിക്കൻ റീജിയനുള്ള സകല അകൈതവുമായ നന്ദി അറിയിക്കുകയാണ്. ഇതുപോലുള്ള നല്ല നല്ല പ്രോഗ്രാമുകൾ ഇനി നടത്തണം. അതോടൊപ്പം തന്നെ ഒരു കാര്യം കൂടി നിങ്ങളെ അറിയിക്കാൻ ആഗ്രഹിക്കുകയാണ്. ബ്രിട്ടീഷ് കൊളംബിയ പ്രോവിൻസ് രൂപീകരിച്ചു. ഔദ്യോഗികമായിട്ടുള്ള ഉദ്ഘാടനത്തിന് വേണ്ടി ഞങ്ങൾ ശ്രമിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണ്. അതിന്റെ കാര്യങ്ങൾ പുരോഗമിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നു. അത് മാർച്ച് 6-ാം തീയതിയാണ് നടത്തുന്നത്. കൂടുതലുള്ള വിവരങ്ങൾ പിന്നീട് നിങ്ങളെ സമഗ്രമായി അറിയിക്കുന്നതാണ്. എല്ലാവരും എൻ്റെ നന്ദി അറിയിക്കുന്നു.
Thank you, Mr. Matthew V. I guess most of us are already said a few words. And I take this opportunity to thank the entire Chicago province team, the EC members, especially Mathukuti Alambarambil, Benjamin Thomas, Thomas D. Cruz, Koshi George, Mr. Matthews Abraham, Mr. Sabi Koloth, Mr. Sarah Gabriel, and all other EC members for coordinating this program. Back to you, Mrs. Annie Lucas.
Thank you, Pinto. All right, we're a little more over time. We'll move forward. So to our last agenda on the item on the agenda. So we have Mr. Thomas D. Cruz. He is the secretary of the Chicago region. He is a social worker, and he's the trustee with St. Anthony Syro Malabar Mission, Milwaukee, and currently he's also the former secretary of the Indian Social Workers Association of Illinois. So we welcome Mr. Thomas D. Cruz to give a word of thanks.
Hi all. Hi. I am so privilege to thank you all for attending and making this event a remarkable one. So we, the office bearers of the province of Chicago, believe that this program was successful and achieved our goals. First of all, we sincerely thank all the participants who made the program a success. We thank all the global and regional leaders of World Malayalee Council, especially Mr. Gopal Pillai, Mr. P.C. Matthew, Sudhir Nambiar, Pindo Kanambali, and Matthews Abraham. I especially thank the moderator of this program, Dr. Ann Lucas, for her wonderful job. It was awesome. Our sincere thanks goes to guest speakers, Ms. Lovely Varghese and Ms. Monica Lucas, for their inspiring messages. Most importantly, on behalf of Chicago Province, we express our sincere thanks to Mr. Binush Matthew for his wonderful presentation in the seminar. It was very informative. He has covered elaborately on all areas of addiction in this pandemic season within his limited time. So I especially thank all our province leaders, Benjamin Thomas, Mathakuti Alimbarambil, especially Sabi Kolet, Sarah Gabriel, and also Elena George for their sincere efforts to make this event a great success. Thank you all.
Thank you, Thomas. We call him Tommy. Okay, everybody, thank you so much again. We wish you all God's immense ongoing blessings to all of you. We warmly appreciate each and every one of you for supporting us today and for being physically present, if not otherwise just orally present. So on behalf of all the WMC, the World Malayalee Council office bearers of every province, globally, regionally, and province, and on behalf of the Chicago region's office bearers, this is Ann Lucas signing off. So wherever you are, good day, good afternoon, or good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Benjamin.